My prank for Women's Day went too far. It ended our relationship forever. People talk about having problems, but the truth is that a good amount of the problems we are in were caused by our own hands. That was my case as well. The trouble was sleeping on its lonesome, and I decided to go pull its tail with my unnecessary wants and my misguided expectations. My husband and I were married for almost 5 years when my stupidity began dragging our unity down to the ground. I was a grown-up woman, and I let what I saw on social media influence my life. I was going through some videos on the internet when I saw a video made by a couple who were social media influencers. It was a montage of cute pictures and videos of the man celebrating his girlfriend during each and every holiday and celebration on the calendar, from her Valentine's Day to her birthday to Mother's Day, even though she wasn't a mother. They celebrated everything, even Women's Day, International Girl Child Day, and so on. It was like they were always looking for a reason to celebrate and be merry with each other, and I loved that. It felt special, like they wanted to cherish every moment of every single day that they had together. But that wasn't the case with me and my husband. And I remember how I walked up to him after he came back home from work one evening. He came back late that day, later than the time he normally got back. And I remember how I cornered him and told him that I wasn't feeling valued. He was very shocked when I said such a thing. My husband was tired after a very long day at work, and instead of me trying to help him settle in and get his food and bath ready, I was behaving like a vampire sent to suck his blood. He was so confused, but he kept his calm and asked me what I meant and where all of this was coming from all of a sudden. I didn't even blink as I told him that he didn't celebrate me as much as he should. He shook his head in complete awe, then he asked me if I was drunk. He held my arm gently and looked into my eyes with the most wholesome stare I had ever seen. He didn't argue with me. He just asked me what he should do to make me feel valued. I blushed and told him that I wanted us to celebrate more and that I wanted to be celebrated more. He mentioned that we celebrated on my birthday and during Christmas and so on. He mentioned some good celebratory times, and yeah, he was right. We did have good moments, but there was something that video I saw on the internet had done to me. I had seen a reality that was almost unachievable, and I had convinced myself that this reality could be achieved and that it could be the new normal for us. I tried explaining to my husband what I felt, or at least thought in my mind, but he wasn't understanding a single word I was saying. To him, he appreciated and valued me, and that was the truth. Some would even say that he worshipped the floor I walked on, but I needed him to understand that we could do more. Yeah, maybe I believed in perfection a little bit too much, but the thing is that I really believed that I could have the life I saw in that montage on social media. After all my explanations seemed to have fallen on deaf ears, I was forced to show him the video that had inspired all this bigotry. When my husband watched the video, he laughed so loud that even hyenas would have thought that he went crazy while listening to all the nonsense I was saying. I didn't know what was so funny, and when I asked, "You won't believe what he told me." He asked me if I knew the couple personally. I told him that I knew the couple through social media, and I enjoyed their content. I defended them, saying that they had almost 1 million followers who strongly believed in their post. My husband laughed even harder and called me silly. He asked me if I didn't know that almost everything on the internet was fake and a charade, especially the things posted by these so-called influencers. I was so angry that I walked to our room and shut the door so hard that the entire house shook. I was so angry and refused to come out of the room. Even when my husband wanted to take a shower, he couldn't come in because the door was locked. He called my name and asked me to open the door, but I refused. And just reminiscing about all this is just very hilarious because I can't believe that I was actually mad at my husband for telling the truth, and I was being stupid enough to defend a bunch of people I see on the internet as though I knew them personally. After my husband took his bath in the guest bathroom, he came to the door again and knocked gently, telling me that he was sorry. He actually apologized when he didn't do anything wrong. I was literally the one who was stupid enough to escalate things that didn't need to be escalated. He was sweet, and he said some things that made me blush, so I opened the door. After that, he was actually willing to sit down and listen to what I had to say. I sat there and justified the extravaganza that I wanted us to achieve as a couple. I had a lot of things that I wanted us to come up with. And my husband actually sat there and listened to me like we were discussing our monthly budget for bills and food in the house, like it was something important. I told him that I wanted us to celebrate as many of these special days as possible. He didn't want to argue with me, so he agreed. But we had to agree on the ones that were worth being celebrated and the ones we had to let go. He was considerate and willing to listen to the things I had to say. We already celebrated the popular ones, and on the others, he usually carried out simple but thoughtful gestures. We had been planning to have a child since we got married, but it hadn't worked, and that didn't bother my husband, at least not openly. He was confident we would get a child when the time was right. So on Mother's Day, he would give gifts to me as well as his mother and my mother. He'd post pictures of me as well on his social media accounts and wish me happy Mother's Day. He was sweet, but I wanted something sweeter. You could say I was chasing something that wasn't even necessary. The truth is, he was kind and loving to me because after that day, he would try to make sure we did something together on almost every special day, even the ones I couldn't remember. And he tried to do that for a year at least, but then Women's Day came around and you won't believe what my husband did. He held a party and invited every single woman we knew. Both our mothers and sisters were invited, as well as friends. It wasn't something too grand, but it made a lot of people feel special. He gave little gifts that had little message scribblings attached to them. Each gift and the message attached to it were significant to the woman it was given to. My mom was the first person that decided to read her message out loud for everyone to hear, and it was the sweetest thing ever. After her, others began reading theirs aloud as well. My husband had actually sat down and handwritten these messages to appreciate and encourage every woman in that little party. It was so sweet, and some people were even moved to tears. But then there was someone that wasn't particularly moved by this act of gracious kindness, and that person was none other than me. My message was the sweetest, and there were echoes of awe when I read mine because it was evidently the best one. Still, I wasn't satisfied with that. I expected that every celebration was going to be about us and just the two of us. So even after that day came to an end, I was upset, but I knew I would just sound like an evil person if I let out what was making me upset. So I just went to bed early, expecting that things would be better in the morning. But when I woke up in the morning, I heard my husband on a call in the kitchen. The call was on speaker, and it was a few friends that came over for the party, and they were telling him how much it meant to them. He was smiling as he spoke with them, saying that he just wanted to do something for the women he knew on Women's Day. The women told him that they really appreciated it and asked him if he was willing to let them partner with him to do something bigger the next year. Before he could even answer, I ended the call. He looked at me, completely shocked. He asked me what I did that for, and I asked him what he thought he was doing. He was really confused. He was still looking at me like I was made of some material he hadn't seen before. I told him that he was getting on my nerves with the ass kissing he was doing. He looked at me and asked me what I meant by ass kissing, and instead of me taking a step back, taking a breather, and reconsidering my words, I just angrily blurted out the words that were right there at the tip of my tongue. I told him that he spent the entire Women's Day kissing up to the women in his life, and that was what he was doing on the call with those women. I told him that I couldn't take it anymore. His facial expression kept shifting between different emotions that were too perplexing to be named. He asked me if celebrating the women in our lives was the reason for me calling him such rude names that morning. Before I could even answer, the phone began ringing again. The women were calling him back. He asked me for the phone, and I shook my head as I took a step back. He opened his palm and asked me to put that phone in his hand. I refused. I was about to end the call, and my husband strictly warned me not to end that call. I didn't care about whatever he was saying. My finger hit that button without even a second's delay. But I didn't just stop there. I switched off the phone so no other call would come in. That was when my husband asked me what had come over me that morning. I told him that he was getting on my nerves. And he then asked me what that even meant. I was the one that wore an even more expensive look when he said that because I couldn't say exactly what my problem was, but I couldn't hold it back any longer, and I told him that he didn't think I was important. And he asked me what I was talking about because I wasn't making any sense. He reminded me that I was the one that said we should celebrate everything, and that was exactly what he had been doing. I called him a trickster, emphasizing the fact that he was just looking for an excuse to have women around him and for him to confess his secret lust for them. My husband ran his hand over his hair in annoyance and frustration, and then he asked me if I was in my right mind. He asked me if I thought I was lusting over his mother as well. I didn't have the words, so I just ignored the question. I told him that he was supposed to make that day about me and me alone because I was the most important woman in his life. But instead of doing that, he was hosting a party for women, which was basically the first step in his grand plan on how to cheat on me. He asked me where all of this was coming from, and even asked me if he had ever given me a reason to doubt him, and I ignored the question as well. That was what I was doing that morning, ignoring the questions I didn't want to answer or the ones I felt wouldn't help my case. He told me that I was being delusional and that he wasn't going to do any of that arguing with me. He asked me for his phone, but I strongly refused to give it to him. I looked straight in his face and told him that he wanted to continue whoring, and that was why I wouldn't give it to him. He told me that I should be happy that something so small was looking like it was going to bear fruit into something more meaningful, and instead of me being happy for it, I was being so inconsiderate and petty. I scoffed and told him that if he wanted to be a loose man, then I wasn't going to stop him anymore. I threw the phone on the counter and walked away. I went into my room and packed some of my clothes. He came in and saw me packing. He immediately asked what I was doing. I told him I couldn't be around someone who wanted to be so carefree. He was stunned, to say the least. I didn't even let him get a word out. I just finished packing a few clothes that I needed for a few days, then I walked out of the house. I couldn't go to any of my parents' houses because I knew they wouldn't support me. Everyone always loved my husband, even when we fought, and I complained to my family. They would ask me what I did this time. It never made any sense to me why they would think and make me out to be the villain every single time. And it always got on my nerves, so I stopped telling them when my husband and I had any quarrels. I went to a hotel instead to spend a few nights. I was being so irrational and erratic. My husband tried stopping me when I was leaving the house, but I told him I was going to shout, so that didn't end well for him. He let me go. And even after I left, he kept calling my phone, although I refused to pick up. I went 3 days straight without even calling my husband or accepting any calls from him. It wasn't until my brother called me, asking where I had been. Apparently, my husband had been sick, and I was nowhere to be found. I felt like a horrible person, and I quickly rushed back home in worry. My brother was the one taking care of my husband when I got back home. He asked me where I had been and why I wasn't picking my husband's calls. I lied, telling my brother that I went for a retreat and I couldn't use my phone. I lied because I didn't want to look like the villain I can normally be. But even with my lies, my brother seemed unsatisfied and upset with me. He was of the notion that I should be reachable at all times, no matter where I was. When I asked him why he was there, he told me that he came to pay us a visit. But instead of a warm welcome, he found my husband sick and alone at home. My brother asked me to do better and take care of my husband, and then he left. I didn't understand what my family's obsession with my husband was. After all, he was only an in-law. I was the one related to them by blood, but I got the feeling they loved him a bit too much. After my brother left, I took care of my husband until he was well again, and somehow the quarrel between us just never came up again. It was like we forgot about it. He didn't bring up the fact that I was in illogical and royal pain, and I just let him be about wanting to host another Women's Day party the next year. You know what's ironic? My husband presented an idea for what next year's Women's Day would be like, and our friends who were interested in funding the idea bought into it, and together, they made plans for an event to celebrate and uplift women. I tried to not look into it, and I hated the fact that it was shaping up to be as successful as it was getting. Just a month before Women's Day, he got even more funding for the event they were trying to hold. Things were looking up for him, but not that well for my marriage. I don't know how to explain it, but we were never the same after that argument where I had to leave the house. He didn't let me in on a lot of things going on in his life. Half of the calls he made, he'd excuse himself and go somewhere he could make the call alone. And deep down, I harbored an extreme hate in my heart for my husband. I hated how he was flourishing with something that wasn't even supposed to be. He was supposed to throw a party for me or even do something special for me that day, but he decided to do something to celebrate all the women in his life. It was annoying to see that he was thriving so much, and I think I hated myself for even being the reason for him having the idea. As Women's Day came closer, I decided that I wasn't going to just sit back and let my husband be consumed by other women when I was right there with him. Yes, that's exactly what I saw the situation as. I saw things as my husband being focused on other women and that he would most likely cheat on me if he wasn't doing it already. I know, I was paranoid, but I couldn't help it. So, to get his attention back to me, I decided to pull off one of the most extreme pranks I had ever thought of. I needed him to stop doing the Women's Day thing, and from the looks of it, if that year's arrangement went well, then my husband would be organizing Women's Day events annually. I couldn't have that. I couldn't have my husband being surrounded by women all the time. I needed to do something about it, and I was going to make drastic decisions as a result. I knew that the only way I could make sure that any future arrangements would not happen was for me to tarnish my husband's reputation. But I wasn't that bad. I couldn't bear to do that to him. so I decided that I was going to do something to remind him just how valuable I was to him. When Women's Day came, my husband was very busy with the event that had been set up. It was a set of arrangements for women to come and relax, play card games, get free manicures and pedicures, do some creative painting, get free hairdos, and so on. Things women enjoyed doing. I didn't partake in any of them. I just walked around, taking a look like a judgmental critic. But even with my cynical eyes, I could see that everything was going so well. That was when I decided to begin my prank. Right around one of the tables of card games that was set up, I dropped to the floor with no caution at all and pretended to faint. People hurried to check on me. I heard one of the women say that she was a doctor and asked everyone to give me space so I could breathe better and so she could take a good look at me. I felt the air get better as everyone around me gave me some space. Then the doctor came to me. I was so worried that she would catch me in my mischief, but she just asked people to help her carry me to a place where I could rest. I was carried to a room where I was laid on a small bed. I refused to open my eyes until I was sure that I was alone in the room, and then I found a way to sneak out of the room. News of me fainting and now going missing got to my husband, and he was properly frustrated and angry. I turned off my phone, and I could see how much my husband couldn't focus on the Women's Day event. He was frantic and worried, and I wanted to go to him and tell him that it was a prank, but I hadn't seen him that concerned about me for such a long time, so I decided to let it go on for just a little while. I let the drama go on for the entire day, and even at night, I still didn't meet my husband. I stayed in hiding, and the entire day was ruined for him. It wasn't until the next day that I came out of hiding. By this time, my husband had gotten the police involved. I went home and knocked on the door like some delivery man. When the door was opened, it was my husband. He was so surprised and happy to see me, but my reaction was what threw him off guard. I smiled brightly and called out the word, surprise. My husband looked at me and asked me what I meant by what I said. I told him that it was a prank. My husband's eyes widened in surprise. He asked for clarification. He asked what I meant by a prank, and I told him that it was good to see him worried about me again. My husband couldn't believe it. He didn't say anything. He just walked back inside the house. My mother and siblings were in the house. My husband didn't even say anything. He just walked into the room. My family asked me where I'd been, and that was when I realized how far I'd taken my prank. My husband came out a few minutes later and told my family to take me back home, that he was done with the marriage. Everyone was shocked, but particularly me. I didn't expect that, and nothing would have made me think he would do that. Update. Hello, everyone. I told you all that I thought my husband was joking, but the truth was that he wasn't. He actually moved my things out of the house, and even my family members couldn't plead on my behalf. They just kept looking at me like I was some kind of stranger that had committed the most atrocious of crimes. My mother was particularly disappointed that she didn't even let me come to her house. I had to go stay with my younger sister for the time being. The house was my husband's, so I couldn't even do anything. I thought I'd give him some time for him to calm down, but after a week I took my bags and went back, but he told me to go back to where I was coming from. I tried to plead with him, telling him that I was sorry that I took the prank too far, but he didn't listen to anything I said. He told me that I was evil and that he was done with me, and then he said something that really broke me. He told me that he was happy we didn't have a child together. I couldn't believe that he could ever say that to me. I got divorce papers a few days after the encounter that ripped me to shreds. And the sad thing was that no one was willing to speak up for me. Everyone just blamed me, even you all here on social media. I'm so lost. My life had taken a nosedive down an abyss,